Well, at the beginning of every new year, I take a little bit of time to build out some goals for the following year. And one of those goals tends to be, what am I going to do with my devotional time, but also how am I going to develop my knowledge of the languages and other things that I'm working on as well. So let me ask you this. Were you frustrated by your progress in Greek last year? Would you like to plan the following year, this year, so that you don't experience that same frustration? Well, in this video, we are going to talk about how you can make serious steps forward this year in your Greek by just doing a little bit of planning. So let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Darryl Burling from Master New Testament Greek, here to help you with the tools, habits, and systems to master the Greek of the New Testament. Now, if you're interested in learning Greek, then I would encourage you, and if this video is helpful at all, then I would encourage you to go download my roadmap to mastery at masterntgreek.com/roadmap, and that'll give you an overview of how the whole process works, the kind of times involved, and so on and so forth. It's also going to help you with some expectations. Speaking of expectations, in this video, we're going to be talking about setting expectations and planning for the coming year. I want you to have great success in your knowledge of Greek so that you grow in your Greek this year. So, with that, let's talk about 4 steps really to just plan your year so that your Greek takes a huge step forward over the next 12 months. 4 steps to take your Greek to the next level over the next 12 months. And it's pretty simple. The first step is to honestly review how you got on last year. Did you grow in your Greek last year? Did you kind of tread water most of the year? Or perhaps you even might have gone backwards over the year as well. And so to help you to sort of think through this, go back a year, at least in your mind, and just track what were you doing there. So if you keep a journal and you track what you were reading, look at how much Greek you were reading on a regular week or day, and just ask yourself, how are you going now? Are you reading the same amount? Are you reading less? And let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you about how you're going with your Greek over the last 12 months. So the second step then is to ask yourself, well, what did you actually plan to do over the last 12 months? And then you want to ask the question, well, what worked and what didn't work over that period? And more than that, you also want to evaluate, well, given that you planned to do these things, what did you actually do? So what was the difference between what you planned to do and what you actually achieved? And then what you can do is you can go back and look through, well, how did your plan contribute to the growth that you had over the last 12 months? For instance, what resources were you working your way through? Were those resources effective or not? Did you use the right tools perhaps? Were you doing the right kind of work for where you were at in your Greek at that time? Did you have a clear plan of where you were at the beginning of last year? And did you set your expectations for the following year, for the last 12 months accordingly? And did you set aside things like enough time, enough effort, and those kinds of things? So talk about, what did you do? What was your plan? What did you actually do? What was effective and what was not effective? Did you have the right tools? Did you have the right resources? And so on. So that was the second step, really to evaluate your plan from last year, what you planned to do and what you actually did, what worked and what didn't. So the first step is just to honest review. How did you go? Did you go forward? Did you go backwards? How do you feel about that compared to where you were at this time last year? And secondly, what did you plan to do and how did that go? Before I go on to step 3, I just want to ask you, if you're getting value out of this so far, I want to encourage you to hit the like button on this video just so that other people can get an idea that this is a helpful video for them as well. And if you think others can benefit from thinking through a plan like this, then share this with someone else as well. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so that you find out when I release more videos just like this one. So that brings us then to step 3. And step 3 is really about preparing for the coming year. So here, the big question I want you to set for yourself is make sure that you set your expectations correctly. Because if you're feeling frustrated, the reason you're probably feeling frustrated is because you've got wrong expectations, and it could be wrong for a whole bunch of reasons. But probably if you're feeling frustrated or annoyed about the progress you've made over the last 12 months, it's probably because your expectations were not aligned either with the tools, the work, the resources, or the time that you put into your Greek over the last 12 months. So the reason this is so important is because the problem that you've experienced, and if you're experiencing frustration, is not because the language is hard to learn. There are 2 things that contribute to the frustration you may be feeling as you review the last year and your lack of progress. 2 things. First of all, it could be Pure and simple, you set expectations that were just far too high and you failed to meet them, right? That is just a mismatch of expectations. The second reason you may be feeling frustrated right now is because you didn't have the sufficient time or resources, the right resources or tools or things in place that would help you to make the progress that you may have reasonably expected to make over that period of time. So those are the two reasons why expectations, or why that frustration tends to, we tend to experience it, because we've either got wrong expectations or we're not using the right tools, habits, and system for mastering the Greek of the New Testament. And here the thing to bear in mind is that Greek is not like learning history or reading through the Bible in a year. It's not about acquiring information. It's a skill to develop. Learning Greek, or Hebrew for that matter, is a skill to develop. And therefore, like every other skill, it takes time to hone it, to get your head into the game, to be able to make these elements of the language second nature. It just takes time and experience. You cannot rush the development of a skill. But things that do contribute to the development of a skill are things like the right tools and the right amount of time. So what you should expect then is that your skill with the language will develop with experience over time. And what this also adds to then is that you shouldn't expect your ability with the language to surpass your experience. Don't expect your ability with the language to surpass your experience with the language. If you've only been learning Greek for 1 year and you're feeling frustrated, well, you're probably still just figuring out some of those basics. Most people don't get through beginning Greek and then suddenly they have it all nailed. That's not the way the language works. Again, even once you've been through beginning Greek, you've really just got the basics under your belt, which is why we talk about it being beginning Greek, not learning Greek or completing Greek. So watch then for unrealistic expectations. If you set your expectations too quickly or too high, too fast, you are going to be frustrated. Here's some common expectations that people tend to set on themselves early on, which tend to lead to frustration. First of all, a lot of people think, like I just mentioned, that they can just go through beginning Greek and then they can read through the Greek New Testament fluently. Just doesn't happen that way, right? You're going to go through beginning Greek. You might be able to read through 1st, 2nd, 3rd John fluently, maybe even the Gospel of Mark or the Gospel of John, but you're going to get to harder texts that are much more challenging, and you're going to find those frustrating as well because there's still a lot to learn. And you want to develop the skill in the language so that you can encounter those other texts and develop capacities and efficiencies with those as well. Another expectation that people often have when they start beginning Greek is they think that I can just learn the 330 words that occur regularly in the Greek New Testament and I don't have to worry about vocabulary anymore. Well, you're in for some disappointment because you need to learn a lot more than those 330 words. In fact, the more vocabulary you learn, the more satisfying your reading of Greek will be. And my personal philosophy is that you should be learning every word in the Greek New Testament, but not using the occurrence-based system. Use a just-in-time system so that you learn the vocabulary and then you read the text of that vocabulary in, which is exactly what Master New Testament Greek, the student edition, the membership, is all intended to do. So we learn vocabulary just in time, you learn a few words every week, and then you have a bunch of text that you can read through and a bunch of text you've already read that you can reread, and you just develop this over time, and it's a skill to develop, and it really does help. It means that you're coming to the text now with the ability to read a text in its entirety without having to look words up. You just know them. Even if it's just one chapter, then another chapter, then another chapter, it makes a huge difference. So this is the approach to vocabulary that I recommend, and it leads to the least frustrations. So as you prepare then for the following year, then you want to ask, well, given we've already talked about what worked and what didn't last year, we've now set our expectations, what do I need to change this coming year to make sure I make good strides forward in my Greek? Do I need to change resources? Do I need to allocate more time? And you can go with this and add a little bit more, and things, just simple things like adding some accountability, working with a community, writing out your goals so you can actually see them and review them on a daily or weekly basis. These are all very helpful things that you can do just to make these more real and more solid. But prepare for the year. Set your expectations correctly, rethink the resources, the time, and the tasks that you are giving yourself, and set some expectations for the coming year. And that leads us to step 4, which is really about setting some goals for the coming year. And I like to use the SMART framework with a modification, so it's got an ER on it, so it's SMARTER framework, if you like. So the SMARTER framework starts with, each of these letters, SMARTER, basically it's an acronym, right? So the SMART, the first S is for specific. You want to set a very specific goal. Not a goal that's generic, not a goal that's kind of loose, but you want to be very specific. What do you want to achieve this year? For instance, you might say, I want to read some of the Greek New Testament over the next 12 months. Well, that's great, but it's very generic. Which parts of the Greek New Testament? Because if you're going to read something like the book of Acts or Hebrews, we're going to find that very disappointing and very hard to get through the year. But if you choose something a little bit easier, you might have a lot more success. So be more specific about the goals that you want to set for this coming year. Second, then, you want it to be measurable. And again, with the Greek New Testament, this is actually pretty easy. If you say, I want to read 4 books of the Greek New Testament, and you say what books they are, then that's very specific and very measurable. You can see how far through those books did you get, and so on. So this is a very good and measurable goal, but you want it to be specific, you want it to be measurable. You also want it to be actionable, right? You want it to be very clear so that you know what I need to do each day. So you might want to add a little bit more detail to your goal. You might say, for instance, by reading for 15 minutes, 3 days a week, right? Or 5 days a week. And that would be a huge step forward for then, again, helping you to be, it's an actionable amount of work to do each day. So specific, measurable, actionable, and then risky. Now, by risky, what we mean is it's got to be a little bit challenging. You don't want to be too easy. When I was in the corporate world, the tendency for some people was to set their goals really low so that you could scream past them and then you'd get this big reward at the end of the day. But there's no satisfaction in that, and you wouldn't be able to get away with that anyway. So don't set goals that are too low, which aren't very rewarding. Set a goal that's kind of challenging for you, that there's a risk that you won't make it, and let that risk challenge you to keep going and to work hard on it. So specific, measurable, actionable, risky, and then T for time bound. Now, what I mean by this is you want to have it so that you achieve this goal by a certain date. Now, it could be the end of the year, and that's great. I tend to set goals on a quarterly or 6 monthly basis, and I find that really works well for me. But whatever works for you, make it time bound. Give yourself a time limit on how long it's going to be to set that goal and achieve it. Then we add the ER onto the end, and the E here is for exciting. This needs to be a goal that motivates you. What is it going to be that's going to drive you? And so the risk and the motivation here kind of work together so that you're trying to find something that if I could just do this, I'd feel really good about it at the end of the year. And then having achieved that does really help you motivate yourself to achieve that end goal. And at the end of this, I'm just going to give you a quick suggestion that you might want to consider. The last one then is the R, that last R on the end there. And this is a goal that needs to be realistic, okay? It needs to be realistic. And that means to say it needs to fit with where you're at in your stage of life, the amount of energy you happen to have, the other constraints in your life. So you need to make it realistic. There's no point having an exciting and risky goal that you've got no chance of ever reaching. It needs to be something that you can do with the hard work that is needed to go into it. So that's the framework that I use for setting a goal. And I would encourage you to set a goal using this framework around your Greek for the following year. So it needs to be specific, measurable, actionable, risky, time-bound, exciting, and realistic. Okay, so those how I would set a goal. Now let me just tell you, if you've never learned Greek before and you're interested in learning Greek, let me just give you a little plug here. The Master New Testament Greek Mastery Membership is designed for people who have learned no language, no Greek whatsoever, but they want to learn. It's also designed for people who are further ahead as well. But if you've got no Greek and you want to join, within 9 months, you could be reading 7 books of the Greek New Testament fluently without looking any words up. So if you're interested in learning 7 books of the Greek New Testament from nothing right now, then go to masterintegreek.com/roadmap and download your roadmap to mastery today. We do open the membership once every quarter, and it would be great to have you join us. We have it open right now, and if you join the membership, get that roadmap today, you should be able to hear about that opening. It's only open for a couple more days though, so it may close fairly soon, so just watch out for that. And if you're watching this after it's closed, well, stay tuned. We do open the membership every quarter when we start a new beginning Greek course. So one way or another, you could be reading 7 books of the New Testament by the end of the year, even if you've got no Greek behind you already. So with that, I'd love to hear from you. What are your goals for 2022? For this coming year? What are your goals? How are you going to set them? Leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know too, how did you get on with 2021, with last year? Did you achieve some great goals? How did you push your Greek forward? Let me know in the comment section below. I look forward to serving you and seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small consistent steps toward mastery. I look forward to seeing you then.